I want them to feel comfortable going and looking for a job that makes them want to keep doing it, but also gives them the space to be there for their family and to pick sort of how that balance works on any given day, and have that freedom. And I think them also seeing that it's not easy. I mean, they've seen the struggles in starting my own business and how that's affected our family finances and sacrifices we've had to make. But to say, that's okay, right? My oldest son, has said on multiple occasions, I know that this was tough, and I know that I was kind of the reason why you had to make this career change, Dad, but I'm so glad that you're around because I feel like I really know you.
Welcome to Fit That Hustle. I'm your host, Mohammed Asfar. Today we're diving into a story that challenges everything we think we know about success. My guest Alex is a former aerospace engineer, third career coach, and stay-at-home dad. After 19 years designing spacecraft, his life took an unexpected turn when his son's mental health crisis during the pandemic led him to redefine what truly mattered. In this episode, we'll explore how Alex went from corporate success to purposeful living, balancing fatherhood, fitness, and a career transition. If you've ever felt torn between your career ambitions and family life, this episode's for you. How does a successful space engineer discover that his most important mission isn't in the stars, but in redefining what success means as a father? Let's find out from Alex himself. Taking care of your health is non-negotiable, especially as a dad on the go. That's why I trust BioSphere. For clean hydration without the sugar crash, use code MNYY1417 at checkout for up to 25% off. That's price sale, so we can be there for the ones we love. Alex, welcome to Fit That House. Thanks for joining us today. Let's start at the beginning. What drew you to aerospace engineering, and how did that career shape your early years?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So my the start of my career journey was kind of, silly looking back at it now. I got into aerospace engineering because I liked airplanes and I liked math and physics. And, as a 17-year-old kid, I thought that would be a cool thing to get into. I actually tried flying planes a little bit and realized that definitely wasn't for me. But it really wasn't any more complicated than that. I kind of liked those two things and knew that I could work in it. So I went to college and studied those, how to become an aerospace engineer, and found it pretty interesting and kind of just went along with it.
These are subjects that I was not good at all. Like, I'm not a doctoral yet. So you've said that you're having your first child was a turning point. What was it about becoming a dad that made you realize your corporate job wasn't fulfilled?
Well, I had kind of followed the expected career path up to that point, and I'd been doing the things that I had expected and been told were what you did leading up to having a family. I'd moved up some in the job. I had what I thought were really good boundaries around it. And in a lot of ways, I sort of thought I'd built the perfect job for being a parent. And I knew that having a family was really important. And I had grown up actually with my dad not present at all because he had been working very hard, and then he passed away when I was 11 years old. So it was really important to me to focus on being there for my family and finding a way to be a good and present dad, because I'd kind of seen how hard it was without that. But I didn't understand at all what it was really going to be like until I experienced it, which I think is something that a lot of parents really kind of feel. I went on paternity leave with my first son when he was about 3 months old. So my wife took her leave first, and I went after. And I'd never taken care of a kid in any way in my life. My son was the second baby I ever held when they handed him to me in the hospital. And so I kind of took over, and I watched him, and I saw him go from, at 3 months, this little object that really needed everything done for him, to, at 6 months, he was sitting up, he was rolling over, he was starting to, talk a little bit. And I thought, wow, I have seen so much growth and such amazing change in this little child in these 3 months. And at work, absolutely nothing had happened. They had not done my job. They had just anything that sort of was related to my job. They just said, oh, I can wait till Alex gets back. And so I got back to the job, and I thought, well, in the 3 months, I saw my son grow and change so much, and my career basically nothing. And every day was like that. I thought about how amazing the progress my son was making, the new milestones and things I was seeing. And at work, everything was so slow. And I never noticed that slowness. I'd never noticed like just how kind of the progress just moved and nothing really ever happened. And my piece of it was so small that when I stepped away for months at a time, it didn't really matter. And I just all of a sudden had this thought of, if I'm going to spend my whole day away from my son, I can't just be sitting here. I mean, it's not about collecting a paycheck. So I had kind of thought the job was about making money for my family and having boundaries so I could, step away from it and go spend time with him and focus on it. And all of a sudden it was about time, and it was about sort of my impact. And if I'm going to spend my time, what impact is that having? Because I know the impact I can have on my son, but if the impact I'm having at work doesn't match that, then why am I doing it? And ultimately, I had been at the job for 10 years and I left within a month.
Okay, so how did that, like, taking that huge leap, okay, like they say, that huge leap of faith, what was that transition like? Like, well, once you left that 1 month, right? Especially with a growing family, like, I feel it's a risk, right? So like, how was the transition like?
Yeah, it felt very risky, and I had been extremely risk averse in my career up to that point. I had thought, I'll work for a big corporation. It'll be not an easy job, but one that's stable, one that I don't have to worry about quite as much because I really want to focus on my family and it'll provide for us. And I left to go join a startup that had, I think I was the 5th employee and very uncertain about the future. So it's completely out of character for me. And it felt like I had to make a change. That was really what motivated it, that I knew I couldn't just sit there and do this job that didn't seem to matter to me or to them if the option was being there for my son. So I thought, well, if this isn't the answer, what if we try the opposite? And a few really interesting things happened kind of all at the same time. I got this through a friend who had gone to work at this company and said, they kind of need somebody a lot like you. I said, yeah, but I don't want to work for a startup. It could go out of business. It's very risky. I have a family. And he said, yeah, but it might be fun. And so I really kind of had to make that change. And this opportunity happened to show up at the same time. And I said, okay, well, let's at least give it a try. Let's find out about it. And I'd actually interviewed at the company a little bit before, and they'd said, well, I don't think we're really good fit. And I wasn't really looking. And then they came back after my paternity leave and said, we've actually thought about it. And then there is a spot that we think you could really fit in. And, I know you just had your leave, how's it going? And I said, it's terrible. I don't think I can do this job anymore. And he said, well, I know at startup, it sounds very risky, but actually the team is mostly dads. He said, it's all people in the same stage as your career. I have kids that are a little bit older than yours. I know the daycare drop off and sick kids, and most of the team is in that same stage of kids. I think everybody on the team except for one person has a kid under 3. So, it's not that bad. We kind of know what it's like to have working parents here, and maybe it is a good fit. And so I took the leap, and I think the emphasis, or what pushed me towards it, was I have to do something new, and what I'm doing is wrong, so let's try the opposite. And it very quickly became, yeah, I was looking at this all wrong. I thought the key was to have boundaries where I could go to work and then I could go home. But I'm not the type of person who switches off my brain anyway. I was thinking about work at home all the time. But what this job instead was like, we're about integration. If you have to stay home because you have a sick kid, just take your laptop, do what you can do. And, we want you to have exciting work that makes a big difference. And doing that, it was more stressful, and I worked more hours, but I felt so much better doing it. Like, it made a difference, like it actually mattered. And so I didn't mind it. And in fact, I think it made me a better dad, because I wasn't sitting there all day thinking, this is such a waste of my time. I was excited. I was energized. And I brought that back home to being a dad too.
That's amazing. Yeah, like that's a big plus, like having that opportunity to be part of other dads and they can understand your situation. Like, I'm sure like your previous job would not very understanding. Like, if you're not there, you're off. Like, they'll either cut you off, or you don't get paid, or you're just gone. And you'll be substituted by somebody else easily. that's really great because they value you and they see there's value in you, so they're good with waiting up on you for you have a kid, and them having everybody like that, and it's like a community, and working together. That's amazing. Definitely, you had a good choice of making that leap for sure. So let's fast forward to the pandemic. Your oldest son's mental health crisis became a pivotal moment. How did that experience change your perspective on career and family?
So it was 2021, and essentially the pandemic had been very tough on aerospace startups, which is what I was at, and we went out of business. And sort of, I don't know, for an anxious person, that was the worst thing that could happen, right? That was the reason why I said I would never work at a startup was, I could go out of business. And I'd worked there for almost 9 years at that point. So we'd grown a lot, things looked really good, and then all of a sudden funding went away and we were done. And the thing was that kind of experiencing that was really bad for, the people that I worked with, my team. I felt awful. I really wanted to help them find new roles. But for my anxiety, it was actually kind of a plus, because when you're very nervous about something happens and the sun comes up the next day, you keep, things don't change as much. It actually kind of helps lessen your anxiety to realize, well, that was the worst thing I could imagine happening, and it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought. So I decided at that point to kind of just be a stay-at-home dad for a little bit. We knew that my oldest kids were going to go back to elementary school. One of them had never been to school full-time, so that was going to be a big change for him. And we had twin 2-year-olds at the time who'd only ever been in the house with a nanny. And we thought, we need to get them out into daycare, but with the COVID protocols and sickness, it's going to be a mess. So we thought, okay, well, I'll take the time to be a stay-at-home dad. My wife has a stable job she loves. And, a few months we'll get through kind of one winter, and, then I'll look for another job and see what the next step is. So I did that, and it was as bad as we expected. I mean, the kids were homesick all the time, and it was hard and new and a lot of transitions. But then kind of the following January, my oldest son really started to struggle, and he'd been having a harder and harder time with it. He was 9 at the time, and really just kind of got to a point where he was talking about, I don't want to live anymore. He was feeling depressed every day. It was just hard to get him to do anything. And he had an incident at school where he tried to tie a sweatshirt around his neck and told his friends he didn't want to live anymore. And it was just a huge wake-up call for us to see just how serious this was. And that wasn't who he was. I mean, he'd always struggled with anxiety. He'd always been kind of a quiet, sensitive kid, but this was all new, and we were really scared. So at that point it became, I'm a stay-at-home dad, but this is our number one priority. I'd already lost my dad, had taken his own life after living a life battling depression when I was 11. So I'd been through, that kind of loss, and it was really, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen again, that we give our son every aspect of support we can. And from a financial standpoint, yeah, it's not great, but we will spend our last dollar on this, right? We have to make this work. So it changed from, maybe I'll go back in a few months, or I'm thinking about what my next career to be. It became, this is it. Every day is just, what can we do to help him? And, he still had 3 brothers. We still had lots of other kids to focus on, but there were days when it took actually my wife and I both full time to help him, to be there for him and just support him. And that was it. So my career became kind of, who cares? I mean, it felt really bad. It was really hard to make that mindset switch in, I'm not going to be making money. I'm not going to be doing these things because my son needs me. But it was obvious that it was the right thing to do, so I just had to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But, this is a great, first of all, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but, it's a challenge that, you went through it, and the great mindset that you had was that I'm sure you were thinking of like something around, this is just a short-term challenge, we don't want it to be a long-term thing. So it's okay financially, or, if we have to go through this, it's going to be a short term, and we gotta like tackle this as hard as possible, so it doesn't get worse than this. And definitely, yeah, you made the right decision, and I'm glad you went through it, and I'm glad your son is in good health, and things are much better. So you've mentioned struggling with anxiety yourself. How has fitness helped you manage that, and how do you model that for your kids?
Yeah, so I was always an anxious person as well. I've taken various steps. I've done a lot of therapy, but clear cut, no question, the number one thing that has helped manage my anxiety is exercise and just staying active. I have two different aspects of it that I feel like are both help. I try to take walks, usually about 20 to 30 minutes, one of those a day. And that's really just kind of to get out, let my brain wander and not have it be a focused time, not have it be sort of goal oriented, but still moving my body, kind of getting my heart rate up a little bit. And then usually 30 minutes of some type of fitness, running, elliptical, bike, something like that. It made a big difference. So while my kids were, especially my oldest two, when they were little, I got away from it for a little while because life was so busy. I had this job at a startup, and I just kind of said, I don't have time for that right now. And around when my oldest son was about 5, I kind of started to see a lot of the same patterns of anxiety in him that I had. And I thought, I know that what helps me is to exercise, but how much of this is him and how much of this is he picking up on, right? How much of this is me coming through? Because I know I'm not doing everything I can. So that was really, seeing that mirrored back in him was a big wake-up call to me to say, I have to manage this, not just for me, but so that he sees what that looks like, right? He sees I'm not adding to his anxiety, first of all, but secondly, he sees this is what people like us do, right? We have to go out and we have to work at this and we have to manage it, because if you let it go, it can cause all sorts of problems. So that was really when I started, kind of working out and being intentional about it, making sure that I worked out and making sure that he understood, like, oh, I'm going to go do this now, so you understand, like, Daddy's going to go work out, I'll be back, just to kind of plant that seed of, this is something that I do and this is why I do it. And it helped a lot. I mean, I did a lot of other steps at the same time to really manage my anxiety, but I'd say there was no question that just, 30 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week, plus walking as often as I can, is the number one benefit to managing my anxiety.
That's amazing, because, you even not having anxiety, like for me, for example, I always need to I need to refresh my brain, whether it's just like chaotic with the kids or chaotic for work, or, you just gotta get out and just hit that reset button, and it's very important, to do that, because kids pick up on those habits, if they see you through a challenge, how you deal with it. If you deal with it in an aggressive way, they're gonna think that's the right way, they don't know, so they're gonna deal with it that way. So yeah, take a break, go for a walk, whether it's you have an anxiety or you're going through some hard, challenge or whatever in life. Yeah, I always say that to anybody, just go for a walk, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Now come back. I'm glad that you're doing that. You're being a great example to your kids.
Yeah, and I think that same pattern led to, my oldest one is 12 now, and he was looking at, okay, well, I want to make this basketball team. And, he'd seen that pattern of, okay, this is the work you do. And so he would come home from school and say, Dad, do you want to go for a run? I said, sure, let's go. And, he kind of led, it wasn't me saying, okay, if you want to make the team, you have to go for a run. It was really him, but he'd seen that pattern, right? He'd seen, okay, you want something, you got to go out and get it. And I was really proud of him when he kind of led that, and he started going out on his own. He'd go on a run by himself sometimes, or he'd say, Dad, can we go shoot some hoops? I want to practice a little bit. But that mindset of, this is a goal I want, right? He saw me do it with the anxiety, and now he had that. He said, I want to make this basketball team. And so he started doing that himself. And so that's, like you said, that's really where you start to see those patterns, and then you see it pay off. And it's really just so fulfilling as a dad to see that effort.
Definitely, 100%. Now, coaching youth soccer seems like a small part of your story, but I'm curious, what's the most unexpected lesson you've learned from coaching kids?
Yeah, so I started coaching soccer when my oldest one was, I think, 5. I played soccer a lot growing up. That was one of the main sports. That and lacrosse were the two that I really played the most. And he was mildly dedicated to it. He had fun. He didn't love it. He wasn't going out and practicing on his own or anything. And that was fine. And then we actually got hooked up with a guy who had played semi-professional soccer and was a really, really good coach. And I was an assistant coach with him for probably, I think, 4 or 5 seasons. And my son played on the team as a goalie. And I remember that there was this one moment where I was standing there, they were doing a passing drill, and they passed the ball, then they were supposed to make a second pass. And every time the first person was getting the ball, I'd say, okay, now pass it here. Okay, now pass it here. Okay, now pass it here. And the coach came over and he said, Alex, let them do it. He said, I know you know what to do. We need to see if they know what to do. And I thought I was helping, right? I was telling them before they'd get the ball, this is what you do. Okay, you're going to get the habit, you'll do it. He said, just let them do it. If they make a mistake, you stop and then you explain it. And if they do it right, then you have the chance to say, good job. But he said, just wait those extra 3 seconds and just see what happens instead. And I remember standing there and thinking, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then that mindset of my job as a coach is not to tell them how to do everything, right? Especially in soccer. In soccer, it's much more a fluid game where you want to let them learn how to do it and understand and be creative and go out and do it. And so I kind of adopted that, and I saw the difference it made when I just waited. And okay, you didn't make the right pass. Well, stop for a minute. Why'd you do that? What about this pass? Could you see how this would have been better? And I started to realize, well, that's not just for soccer. That's not just coaching sports. That's everywhere. And that idea of you have to let them do it. You have to let them take a turn and just watch, and don't necessarily guide them. Don't necessarily push them one way or other, because A, you give them the chance to do it their own, and B, you actually give them a chance to teach you things too sometimes. If you're always telling your kid what to do, you'll miss out on so many opportunities where they do something, you go, wow, I never would have thought to do that, but that was actually really interesting. And so that moment, right, it carries over, and I keep that mindset so often, and it's hard sometimes, right? The example I always use is teaching my kids to ride a bike, coming up to a stop sign and just thinking, okay, I want to tell them to stop, right? Because it's safe, it's important. But if I can see there's no cars coming from where I am, if we're on a fairly quiet road, just let them pull up to the stop sign and see what they do, right? If they stop on their own, then it's a chance for me to say, oh, great job. You did an awesome job stopping. I'm so glad you did that. And if they blow right through it, but I could tell there were no cars, then we have a chance to say, okay, this time it worked out, but you have to be really careful. And obviously, if we're coming onto a busy intersection, I can see cars buzzing around and I'm nervous about it, then I'll say, okay, we got to stop here. But in, taking those lower risks, right? And again, my anxiety plays into this a lot of everything has to be perfect. I have to do this correctly, and just letting them make those mistakes and just kind of just being there, right? If they fall off their bike, don't warn them about how not to do it. Let them explore, let them figure it out, and just be there when it happens and say, okay, why do you think you fell? Yeah, you were going too fast. Okay, well, next time we got to slow it down a little, right? But if I just said that, they wouldn't have believed me. They wouldn't have listened, right? This was the lesson. So that mindset of just wait those extra few seconds, give them a chance to do it, and then you can make a comment about how they could have done it if it works out poorly. And if it works out great, it gives you a chance to praise them. And so it becomes much less of a sort of prescriptive, you tell them how to live their life, and a very positive thing instead.
Definitely. I agree with you 100%. That's how I am with my kids, my kids, they play basketball, soccer, they're swimming, so I watch them all the time, and I don't comment when they're playing. This is your coach's time. This is not my time, I watch you and I'll work with your development, but that's going to be after that 1 hour when you're done with your coach. Okay. But don't look at me. This is not for your time to look at me. Am I going to praise you while you're going? Maybe I'll give you a thumbs up, right? But don't look at me. Don't rely on me. You do your training before you do your training. Okay. They have that mindset where like that. I want to go early. Okay. At least 1 hour early. I want to do my training before prep. Yeah. I'll make fine. No problem. But you don't rely on me. You do your own thing, because they have to learn from themselves. They have to listen, I'm here for you. I'll help you out. But no, you got to rely on yourself. Yeah. So yeah.
And as a soccer coach, I'd say we really appreciate parents like that, because they can yell things and encourage their kids. And I know it's coming from a place of love and wanting them to do the best, but sometimes they're yelling, run forward, and we're yelling, run backward. And who's the kid going to listen to? They're going to get super confused. So definitely appreciate it. And I know that when my son plays basketball, I don't know much about it, but it is really hard to sit back and, like you said, just let it be. And so this is the coach's job. They know what they're doing. Just let it go. So
yeah, I had this one parent, his kid went for a layup and it was under the basket, and he looks at his dad and he's like, you're looking at your dad. Okay. Don't look at your dad. And his dad was sitting right beside me. I'm like, don't teach him that. Okay. He's not going to be able to improve. Okay. don't teach him that. He's like, yeah, but it's my mistake too, because I usually comment, I'm like, don't, just enjoy it. He's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, man, I agree with you 100% with that. Alex, you've built an incredible career as a career coach, and I know you're passionate about helping others by meaningful work. Can you tell us more about what your coaching business does and how it helps parents navigate career transitions?
Yeah, so after my son had his struggles and kind of became clear we were going to need a parent who had the flexibility, who had the sort of open schedule that they could step back and, if he was struggling, be that support that he needed. I decided to follow a different path than I had in aerospace engineering, and I went and got trained as an emotional intelligence coach. I started coaching people and then parents, and eventually realized that that feeling that I'd had when I went back to leave after my first job, after my first son was born in that first job, was actually a fairly common one, that there's a lot of people who have that perspective change in, I want to do something different, but I don't know what it is. This doesn't feel impactful and I want to make an impact. Or just, I need something that serves my family better than what I'm doing. So I started a program that works around helping parents figure out what are their strengths, what do they bring to the office, and how does that feed what kind of fulfills them. And by understanding that, then you can go find a job that, even if it's harder, even if it's more stressful like mine was, it makes you a better parent. It makes you feel like you're making a bigger impact in your time away from your kids. And then that helps you be more present when you are with your kids, because you feel more comfortable with it. You feel more confident in it. So the program is essentially helping parents find that job that feeds their family and feeds their soul also, but in a maybe unclear, or if they don't know where it is, or sometimes in just a very surprising place like mine was, and work through that process to say, this is okay, I can go get this job, because it can be kind of hard to feel like you're throwing away a long career that you've worked at, or a lot of time at a company, or scary to change into something you're not sure how it's going to work out. But I always tell parents, one of the great benefits that came from me going into this much more risky, much more stressful job was my kids got to see me doing that. They got to see me taking a risk on something that mattered. And even though it didn't work out, that was okay, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to work out. Showing your kids failure and showing them that you try things and you're not afraid is the way that they'll learn that too, that they'll learn it's okay to try things. And that's the most important lesson you can teach your kids, is how to be brave and try things that they're afraid of. Because otherwise they're just going to sit back and be very passive and, miss out on opportunities all through their life. So I help find that job that gives you that opportunity to be kind of a great parent, have that fulfilling career, and show them the life that you want them to have.
Amazing. Where can listeners go and learn more about your coaching services and connect with you?
Yeah, my website is empathicegg.com, or you can always find me on LinkedIn. That's usually where I'm posting about being a parent, finding a fulfilling career, understanding how to make boundaries and integrate in work, things like that.
Thanks for sharing that, Alex. I'll make sure that include those details in the show notes so listeners can easily find you. Looking ahead, how do you hope your journey influences your son's approach to their own careers and lives?
Well, I hope what they see is that I wasn't afraid to take the challenges, and also that I really wanted to help people. That was something that was missing a lot in my old job. And it turned out when I moved into this coaching, it really was because I recognized that the thing that I loved about the jobs that I'd had was the people, and working with them and helping them and mentoring them. So I think that idea of not just I'm getting a job to get a paycheck, but that I get a job that means something to me, that I can see the impact that I'm having, and that it makes me feel good, so I'm able to bring that energy home as well, that positivity. That's really what I want them to understand, because that's what I want them to go find, right? I want them to feel comfortable going and looking for a job that makes them want to keep doing it, but also gives them the space to be there for their family and to pick sort of how that balance works on any given day, and have that freedom. And I think them also seeing that it's not easy. I mean, they've seen the struggles in starting my own business and how that's affected our family finances and sacrifices we've had to make. But to say, that's okay, right? My oldest son, has said on multiple occasions, I know that this was tough, and I know that I was kind of the reason why you had to make this career change, Dad, but I'm so glad that you're around because I feel like I really know you. Because he's old enough that he remembers when I had that really stressful job, and he remembers nannies picking him up and, daycare drop-offs where I rushed in because I had to make a meeting. And he said, it's nice to have you around. It's nice that I get to know you. And so that sense of this has been worth it, even if it didn't, even if the financial aspect wasn't exactly the same as what it could have been, it makes it all worthwhile.
You can transition from space engineering to finding this true calling while raising 4 goals. Imagine what you can discover about yourself. His journey proves that it's never too late to align your career with your values as a parent. Whether you're feeling stuck in your career, managing family challenges, or seeking better work-life integration, taking that first step towards change is crucial. Ready to start your own transformation story? Book a call with me today and let's create a strategy that helps you build a stronger body and more fulfilling career. As Alex shows, true success comes from having the courage to redefine what matters most. Let's make it happen. Thank you, Alex, for sharing your inspiring journey with us today. Your story shows that sometimes our greatest career moves come from listening to our hearts as parents. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you that Alex's career coaching service helps parents navigate career transitions and find meaningful work. If you're interested in learning more, visit the website and you can check it out in the notes for the links. And thanks to Biosphere for powering this podcast. When you're working on transformation like Alex, hydrated, energized is key, especially for busy dads. Use code MNYY1417 for up to 25% off your next order. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with a parent who might need to hear this. Until next time, stay strong, stay present, and keep hustling.